I think this will work out. Comic book conservation rust mitigation. So we've all had to deal with rust migration from staples in comic books. If you conserve comic books, even if you just collect them, you've seen it, you've had to deal with it, even if the only dealing you've had with it is, oh, I'm bummed, one of my comics has rust in it, or trying to trade for a better copy, or rejecting one that you're interested in potentially buying because it has rust migration at the staples. It's a significant issue. The staples themselves, typically they're galvanized steel, but galvanizing is not perfect protection against rust. And if they've been stored in a semi-humid environment, especially these very old ones, you can get rust. That rust can migrate into the paper. It is acidic, so it will disintegrate the paper given enough time. And we often see this where the paper right around a rusty staple is just literally dust. Yeah. So it's a significant problem. I have some videos on the channel about using some different chelators to remove rust from staples. I have not dealt with removing rust from paper, but somebody we know has. This is from Larry's channel. The two images here, the top image is before, the bottom two images are after. And you can see on the left, this is a staple hole where, like I said, the paper itself is literally turned to dust. It's just disintegrated. Larry used actually a very strong chelating agent, a thiol, to reduce, chelate, and then remove the iron oxide here. And you can see from the below image on the left again, he did it very effectively. I mean, essentially completely removed the rust from the paper.
Yeah.
However, there was a cost. So if you look at the images on the right, there's significant ink loss in this book, especially in the red inks, which may have iron pigments in them. But even so, look at on the image on the right, I still think you would rather have the below book. I mean, I think Larry chalked this up as a learning experience, but I think it showed a ton of potential. Look right around the two staple holes, especially the bottom staple hole. That huge rust migration stain that was just a real blemish on the book, gone, and paper deacidified, no longer disintegrating. So I watched this series, and this is a series on Flying L Comics. I put a link in the description. Everybody here should already know Larry and his work, but just in case, check that out. This was a series he did. I want to say it was 8 or 9 total episodes, and fascinating work. Again, he used a very strong chelator, a thiol, strong chemicals, and he mentioned actually the smell. So thiols are sulfur based, and they smell nasty, really bad.
Well, I did it on this low grade beater book, you know, and it was just an experiment to kind of see what would happen.
I took it as, you know, a something that actually showed a lot of promise. So not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a journey.
Yeah.
And then this past week in the comic book conservation community, our Facebook page group, Peter Alechi posted this work that he did with Evapo-Rust and kind of blew a bunch of us away. And I think it shows so much potential. I wanted to talk about it here. So maybe before I jump in, we'll just look at the comments. Ben says, good topic. Why does it look like grease? Well, you know, iron, there's actually like at least 4 oxides of iron. Some of them are black, not reddish or reddish brown. And so sometimes you see that really black iron oxide, and it can look like grease. And Mike says, yeah, huge improvement, color loss. but looks much cleaner. And Larry's listening in and says, I lost the red inks. Yep. So I asked Peter if I could present his work here. So I have his permission. He couldn't join us tonight, but he may join us in the future. And he used this product called Evapo-Rust, which is basically non-toxic. I actually think you could probably ingest this in small amounts. And we'll get back to that in a moment because I had to do some investigation.
We're not officially recommending anyone ingest this.
Not a recommendation, but it is non-toxic. It's a really interesting product that I think shows a lot of potential. And like I said, we will get back to that. But first, let's talk about his post and what he did, because I think it's brilliant. Experiment, I'm going to read this. I apologize. Experiment in removing rust mitigation with Evapo-Rust. Rust migration is common and difficult to remove. This method uses a water-soluble, commercially available rust remover called Evapo-Rust to treat rust migration zones on interior wraps. The methods: 1, place wrap on ramie and spray with water, so it's just a rinse. 2, brush areas to be treated with Evapo-Rust. 3, place small pieces of paper towel over treated areas on both sides of the wrap and brush with Evapo-Rust. So he's trying to saturate that area and then keep it from creating tide lines or migrating away too much. So he's trying to make sure that the Evapo-Rust chemical is in contact with that rust migration for a long period of time. So step 4 is cover with wet paper towel and allow to sit 4 to 12 hours, depending on the extent of rust damage. Step 5 is rinse for 2.5 minutes in water. Step 6 is rinse for 2.5 minutes in calcium hydroxide solution. Step 7, allow to completely dry overnight between paper towels. So again, I think this is brilliant. All credit to Peter, and I do have his permission. This is a before image, and you can see both staples here have rust migration. We see both the black migration and also the reddish brown around these two staples. The bottom one is worse than the top one, but we see it in both. This is, forgive me, I'm not looking at his steps, but this is the rinse prior to adding Evapo-Rust. So step whatever. This is him brushing on Evapo-Rust specifically to the staple holes. So you can see he's on ramie paper on a hobby mat. So the mat itself would be impermeable. So we're only losing water here through evaporation, presumably through one layer, no blotting.
Yep.
We want the material to stay wet, and we want it to stay in contact with the rust so that it can do its job chemically. And then these are little paper towel strips that he cut up and placed on the area of interest, and then he saturated these with the material. And again, this is to make sure, we'll get into the chemistry in a minute, but this is to make sure the chelating agent is available at the point of the rust to reduce the rust and make it water soluble so it can be washed away.
Could I ask a theoretical question to you? So I know, or I've read quite a bit about gels, but I've never. Every time I've gone to like order them, they've been out of stock at places for whatever reason. But I've had interest in them, and I think the same methodology applies to how a stain like this is treated and how you would use a gel. I mean, you're basically just having the paper towel, you're transferring it. Right. I mean, that's the theory.
In this instance, you're technically actually solubilizing it and rinsing it away. We'll get into the chemistry
with the extra steps. Yeah, no, understandable. Yeah.
And so
this is a good amount of it is being absorbed into the paper.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a first step. I would have done a few things a little differently than what Peter did here, but then again, Peter's the one doing the work and he did it, right?
Sure.
I'll credit to him.
Yeah.
I think I probably would have come back rather than leave it for 12 hours or 4 to 12 is what he states. I think I probably would have I would have brushed fresh Evapo-Rust on the areas multiple times to make sure they were saturated with the active ingredient and that it was active, and tried to minimize the total time in water. That would have been my approach. I'm not sure that it would have worked better, but my concern here is loss of inks, and the longer we stay in water, the more likely we have ink bleed. So
also,
that would have been my motivation.
Interior, because that from the get-go, I was like, word choice is important. There was no mention of cover. This technique works mainly on, or it works only on interior wraps because of the duration of the.
Yeah, for those that don't know, interior wraps will tolerate aqueous solution like this for a day reasonably well. I do find we get some ink bleed, but they tolerate it reasonably well. The cover generally will not. You'll get a lot more.
The paper will just start to get scary real quick.
So here's the paper towel. He said wet. I assume just water. Could have also been calcium hydroxide, but if somebody says wet paper towel, I assume they mean just water. And I think on the bowl, on the bowl on the left, that's probably his brush, and that's probably the Evapo-Rust, which is kind of a amber type color. And this is the after, which is shockingly good and shows huge potential. This is why I was so excited about this post. This is why I'm so excited about our Facebook group and the work that people are doing there. So you'll note the top staple hole is basically cured.
Oh, I see Captain Larry there.
Ooh, look at that. He's got the shoulder boards and everything. Oh, yeah. Official.
In character.
I'm officially stuck in traffic, so I thought I'd just join you from the app.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
To see you.
Howdy.
Captain Larry in the house. So what country are you in?
I am in the country of Hong Kong. No, no, I'm just in China. Just got in from New Delhi, and now I'm in Hong Kong and stuck in Hong Kong morning traffic. So,
wow.
But I was looking at this book and the work that was done on it, and it's phenomenal.
Hats off to Peter.
I do. Yeah, hats off to Peter. I do have the same rust remover, and I've just been using it to take rust off staples, but I haven't tried it on paper yet. But this, I was thinking about what Phill just said about using a gel. This can be turned into a gel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least
you just add a couple of things to it.
I was going to say that the gel too, in my research, it's used when you're not able to fully submerge a document generally. So that's why it's just surface, and it's for the least amount of contact. If you're using a gel here, it would be secondary to the wash, or I guess you could use it and then use the wash, but maybe it's like an extra step where since you're already washing the whole paper anyway, it's not necessary to use the gel. Yeah.
Well, the gel may also keep the active ingredient local longer.
Yes, that would
maybe for the cover. The gel could work better for the cover, and then this could work. So that could be the solution. Yeah.
I think you could add. I'm not going to tell people how to make napalm, but you add some soap chips to it, and it will gelatinize the liquid by the other materials that are in it. So, just a thought.
Yeah. Here is the other side of the wrap. So you'll note the lower staple, still a little bit of that brownish red rust is there. The black migrated rust completely gone from both staple holes. Again, I'm hats off to Peter. Really great job. I think this shows a ton of potential. I did not have images in the same light from the same angle to show before and after. This was the best I could do from what he sent me. But I think you can see here that top staple hole, it's just completely fixed as far as I'm concerned with respect to the rust migration. The bottom staple hole, the black migration is gone. That's the ugliest part. The little bit of brownish red stain that's left there really it's a huge improvement. And I don't think that's going to get dinged much at the graders table, personally. Also of note here, now, again, we don't have the same lighting for these two images.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's raking light, so it's tough to say for sure.
That the image above, I think, is actually very saturated. Like, look at, for example, maybe it's the butler's tie. I'm not sure. The fellow with the hat, his tie is black like a black hole, right? Like, that's super saturated. I don't think that's quite how the comic looked. I think that's a video camera compensating a little bit. So it's impossible for me to say if there was a little bit of color loss here. There may have been, but I'll say this. The bottom, the after image, if you were to look at it, not side by side, but you're just looking at the image, it does not look overly faded. It looks like it could very well be the way it was born. It doesn't look super saturated, but it does not look overly. It doesn't strike me as, oh, well, it's faded, it's ruined, or anything like that.
See, the problem I had when I did mine with the pretty harsh chemicals is these older books, they used iron oxide to make the reds. This did not take out any of the iron oxide out of the red ink.
Yeah. The reds look great.
I pretty much lost all the red ink out of that book. And like I said, that was like one of my first real experiences in experimenting with this. But I can't wait to get home and try this on some rusty papers.
Yeah. So based on this, I did a little homework for y'all. So what is Evapo-Rust?
Ooh, nice.
Peter posted this and said, well, it's proprietary. Well, that's never stopped me before.
Not really.
I love
it. I did a little bit of homework.
Yeah.
So there's what they used to call MSDS and now they call SDS. There are different laws in the US and in Europe. But you have to at least give enough information for, like, for example, for firefighters to deal with your material. If there's a fire on your premises, they have to know what sort of chemicals are in there, right? Mm-hmm. So it turns out, though, that these chemicals are really benign. And because they are benign, they can pretty much just say proprietary. So here's the section of the SDS that I found that has some information on it. And if you look in section 3, the ingredients are water, greater than 83%, proprietary non-hazardous chelating agent, less than 16%, proprietary non-hazardous detergent, less than 1%. So what do we have? What is Evapo-Rust? Evapo-Rust is a chelating agent. This is a chemical that essentially reduces and solubilizes the iron oxide, and then a detergent, which would assist in now taking that chelating agent and the iron oxide out of solution and away from our paper. Okay, well, that gives us some clues, but there's still leaves a lot to be desired here. I don't know if I necessarily want to put this on my comic book yet. So I did a little more homework. And it turns out the company that makes Evapo-Rust filed for a patent in 1959, and that patent was issued in 1963.
Detective Paul. And we got Larry back here.
Well, those of you that saw my origin story know that I have a few dozen patents to my name, so I know how to navigate the USPTO. And I found this patent for Evapo-Rust, essentially. And like I said, it was filed in 59, issued in 63. The important thing you need to know, because I did the homework on it for you are these 2 paragraphs that I took from the patent. Okay. The prime object of the present invention, that is Evapo-Rust, is to provide a substantially neutral, non-corrosive composition which has a marked ability to dissolve rust, to simultaneously sequester iron oxide particles, and also to provide a detergent action which accelerates removal of rust from any surface to which it is attached. Further, the ingredients of the instant composition are first, as the major portion, specially prepared concentrate from the agave cisalana or agave phorocroides plants, and second, as the minor portion, a specific synthetic amino acid compound. These ingredients, when properly compounded, provide a neutral composition of unusual and unexpected potency for the removal of rust, and that's why they were issued a patent. Now,
interesting.
This patent's actually expired, so to the extent that this information is now public domain, you can use it, you can even make it and sell it commercially. So for those that don't know, agave cisalana is this plant down here on the right. It's sisal. It is, or sisal. It is what twine is made out of, basically. This is a common plant. It's used in landscaping, but it's also been used industrially because the fibers of the leaves are very strong, and they are what, there's an entire industry of using this plant to make twine. So it is basically non-hazardous. Like I said, I think you could essentially drink this in small amounts.
Again, we don't recommend this.
We do not recommend it. So it's very interesting to me, and I think it shows a lot of potential. I think it's essentially safe to use on paper because the pH is just slightly acidic, but it is a reducing agent, a chelating agent, and a surfactant, all of which, as you can see from Peter's work, does not negatively affect the inks or the paper. Now, I do think it's hugely important that Peter rinsed and then deacidified after use of this. I do not recommend anybody use this without deacidifying post-use of this material, okay? Because it is acidic and it is a reducing agent. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
You're just going to have to buy a few bottles of this stuff, huh?
Right. Ben points out that they also make tequila from not this exact plant generally, but a plant in this same family, agave. It's used for a bunch of things. So here are my conclusions. Very promising results. Probably a safe method to remove rust from paper. Some ink fading may be occurring. My guess is it's because of the total duration in water more than it is from the chemical action. Yep. And so my bottom bullet conclusion is more work needs to be done, especially on concentration and duration of exposure. I think if we could get this chelating action done and get the iron oxide removed in shorter time, we probably would see no loss of ink whatsoever. I don't think the chemicals here are interacting with the ink. I think whatever small amount of ink loss we may have seen with Peter's work here is probably because when the book sits in aqueous solution for 12 hours, you get some ink bleed.
Well, the thing is these golden age books, we got to remember the reds were made from iron oxide. So if you have a golden age book, there's a high probability you may be removing some of that red. Today's inks and really the bronze and coppers did not use iron oxide. They made the switch, I think, in the late 60s. But if you're doing this with a golden age book, I'm not sure I would recommend it.
Somebody help me out. This Richie Rich was an early book, though.
Looked like it was from the 70s.
Was it? You know what?
Yeah,
You guys,
It's on the interior panels.
there wouldn't be any iron oxide in those inks.
I don't think there was color loss. I think it was just a slight variation in raking light.
I think it was
Could
the
be.
photo. I think
Yeah,
it was
could
the
be.
photo.
So we'll have to do some more homework. But again, I was just so excited about those results and wanted to share them from our comic book conservation community, the Facebook group. And again, thank you to Peter. I have a link in the description.
Awesome.
He put
job.
together a short video. It's on his YouTube channel. And
Peter's got a YouTube channel?
He does. It was the only.
I didn't know.
I didn't know either. It's actually the only comic book related thing that I saw on there. But check it out. I also put a link to Larry's Freedom Train playlist in the description as well. Actually, I pointed directly to the video in which Larry used the chelating agent, the thiol, to do the Freedom Train de-rusting as well. So check those out. Do your homework. Do some experiments, share them with us. We'll grow the community together. We'll learn together. And I think this one, I think it's just a success as is, and it's something to be built on. I don't even think of this as a learning experience / mistake or whatever. I think this one's.
I want to jump on this and try it. I have some old Golden Age that I'm going to put the stuff on, and I'll take some pictures, and we'll do basically a sequence to see how it fades.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, awesome job. Right. Too bad Peter can't join us. But yeah,
I think he's going to join us in the future. He was not available tonight, and I had the material basically ready to go, and I didn't have anything else to sub in, so I said I could do it, but he'll join us in the future, and it'll be fun. We did have a question from Maurice, and during the week, he messaged me to say, how do you get whiteout off of comic book covers? And I said, I don't have any experience, but we could bring it up in the show and see if anybody else has dealt with it, either